Creator and sustainer of all things and all people, you are the source of all wisdom and light. Enlighten our minds to receive your guidance, so that you may lead us into true wisdom. May all that we say and do in the service of this county, whether as elected member or as officer, be in accordance with your will and for the good of your people. Amen. Evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, would everyone leave by one of the two exits at the rear of the chamber? Officers will be on hand to assist with anyone, disabled persons. Mobile phones. May I ask all members who have mobile phones, including myself, with them to ensure that they're switched off so that they will not disturb the meeting. Agenda item number 1, Chairman's announcements. Deaths of past chairman and former county councillor. It is with great sadness that I report the deaths of former county councillor and past chairman Mr Bill Lickorish and of former county councillor Mr Don Smart. Mr Lickorish was a member of the county council from 2005 to 2021. He represented the Broughton Astley electoral division. Mr Lickorish mainly served on the Development Control and Regulatory Board and on a variety of overview and scrutiny committees, including a period as chairman of the Children and Young People Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee. He served as chairman of the council for the municipal year 2016 to 2017, where his easygoing and personable style did much to build new and lasting relationships whilst presenting the county council in the best possible light. And I was privileged to go to his funeral a few weeks ago. Mr Don Smart was a member of the county council from 1973 to 1981, representing the Melton Mowbray North electoral division. He served mainly on the Policy and Resources Committee and the Education Committee, where he was vice chairman for a number of years. I invite the council to stand in silent tribute to the memory of Mr Lickorish and Mr Smart. Thank you. Members should be aware that Mr Jeff Welsh has recently resigned from the County Council due to health reasons. Mr Welsh had been a member of the Council since 2013, representing the Blaby and Glenparva electoral division. He served mainly as one of the group spokesmen on the Children and Families Overview and Scrutiny Committee. He was also a member champion for children in care and care leavers. I am sure members will join me in wishing Mr Welsh well for the future. He will be certainly missed in the council chamber. Armistice Day. The County Council marked Armistice Day with a service and a 2-minute silence on Friday the 10th of November. The short and dignified service was inducted by my own local vicar, Ludger Fremmer. I would particularly like to thank Leanne Plummer for playing the last post and Revelli so competently. I was also pleased to see that County Hall was illuminated in red for the duration of the Royal British Legion's Poppy Appeal. Finally, I would also like to thank those members who were able to attend local services on Remembrance Sunday and lay a County Council wreath. Agenda item number 2, the minutes. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 27th of September 2023, copies of which have been circulated to members, be taken as read, confirmed and signed. Mr Orson, will you second?
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, declaration of interest. I invite members who wish to do so to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. Are there any such declarations? Right, Mr. Phillimore.
Thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 6 will be a non-registrable interest relating to any matters relating to special educational needs and disabilities on the basis my wife is employed by this authority. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Phillimore. Any others? Nope, thank you very much. Agenda item number 4, questions asked under Standing Order 7, 1, 2 and 5. The questions and replies set out in the order paper will be taken as read and entered into the minutes. I have received notice of supplementary questions from Mr Hunt to both his questions, A and B, and to Mr Mullaney, and will now call upon them to put them. Thank you, Mr Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. This is about congestion and how we measure it, for those who haven't read their order paper. The answer, Chair, takes about 400 words to explain why words like reasonable and proportional are enough when we're making decisions about major roads. And this is one of the main things that the public are concerned about. The lead member himself is known for using the words congestion busting. Now, I've asked this question to find out actually how we should be deciding and making decisions on roads and congestion. And the figures down there in the answer...
Is this a supplementary?
Yeah. Yeah. Would you like me to... Yeah. Well, one of the problems with the system at the moment is that members don't see their order papers and they've no idea what the question and answer was unless they have done that. So I had a little bit of a preamble to make sure that everybody understood what I was saying. Otherwise, what's the point? Yeah. So I'd ask the lead member what he means by congestion charging in terms of the metric that's been given in terms of average delay or average speed in his press releases. Thanks.
Mr O'Shea?
Thank you. I'll answer you simply that congestion is congestion. And to be honest with you, I don't know what more I can say to you other than that we have congestion and we try our very best as a council and as a highways authority to reduce that. But if you're not happy with the reply, I'll give you a written reply again from officers. Thank you.
Is that all the supplementaries on this question? Fine. So you are now on to your second question. I gather you would also like to go ask a supplementary.
This is a question about EHCPs for children in SEND settings. I wasn't aware, and it is important that apparently the EHCP names a school place, and they can nominate a school in which to send a child to if the EHCP seems to comply with what that school can offer. But if that school has not completed an inclusivity assessment, or if it claims that it's full or lacks capacity, what happens to the child when they're allocated a place which hasn't been assessed? That's the point.
Mrs Taylor?
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand your question because it wasn't really very clear. So an EHCP would recommend a school based on need. We wouldn't recommend a school that couldn't meet need. So if a mainstream school has said they can't cope with the child, we would do an EHCP and see what support we could do for wraparound with that child in mainstream school. And if the assessment was that they would need a specialist placement, we would then recommend a specialist placement that can meet their need. So I hope that clarifies your
I'll take a
question.
further written answer.
If
you
not,
may.
yeah, just if you just want to email me and I can give you a bit more. If you just clarify your question a bit clearer, I'll be able to give you a clearer answer.
And Mr Mullaney, I think you've got a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and thank you for the reply, Mr O'Shea. Residents are really concerned about the safety at the junction of Olympic Way and Leicester Road in Hinckley, and they do believe that double yellow lines would make the situation more safer there when people are having to pull out onto Leicester Road, where the speeds can be very fast on that stretch of the road. I've contacted Leicestershire Police to see if they can supply more information to the county about the collision that happened at the junction, and hope that we can see some safety measures implemented there. Thank you.
That's all right. So he was giving you information.
Oh, well,
It
I'd
was
just like to
actually
say that the
supplementary.
first, Chair, I'd just like to say the first we've known about an issue on this particular road was the 16th of November. So we've had no previous acknowledgement from anybody other than from the 16th of November, but officers are looking in it for you, Mr Mullaney. And if you've got any spare money out of your members' highway fund, that may well go to help. Thank you.
Agenda item number 5, receive position statements from members of the Cabinet, and the position statement is from the leader. Thank you. Sorry, I've just got to finish this bit a bit longer now. When the leader has finished his statement, I will now invite members to speak. If they wish to speak, please raise your hand and I will then call you to speak. I will invite Mrs Hack and Mr Mullaney as leaders of the opposition to speak last, before the leader's right to reply. Thank you. Now, Mr Rushton.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I start on position, can I ask Michael, as leader of the Liberals, to convey our sorrow that we've lost Jeff? I mean, we didn't always agree with what he said, as you can rightly imagine, but the view of the majority of us, he was a man of integrity, and I think the County Council will miss him, so if you can convey that to Jeff. Thank you. Firstly, on the autumn statement, we weren't shocked to see that the settlement was unchanged from our expectations, but to be honest, we were disappointed. The substantial rise in the national living wage, whilst welcome, I think, for people who are lower paid, was a surprise that it was so high, and it was even a bigger surprise following that we didn't receive any money to fund it. So when you put the national living wage up by 10%, it costs us £20 million, and with no more money, it eats away at what money we've got. So the 5%, which will probably end up, or near enough 5%, putting on council tax, 3 plus 2, equates to about £20 million. So that's where that has gone. So it'll make it extremely hard, or even harder, to provide a balanced budget, especially when you reckon that with, you know, inflation's down now, but over the year it's been 10, 11, 12%. So you average out over the year, and although they talk about inflation being down, the big increases are like baked into the system. So it's going to be very, very hard to deal with the inflation. And then as if you speak to Deborah or Christine, the growth in children's social care budget is hard for us to cope with. Special educational need is difficult. The transport costs of special educational need are horrendous. So we're in a very, very difficult position going forward when we get more and more jobs, more and more expense piled onto us, and yet we're constrained about what we can raise. And even if we could raise more locally, it would be very, very, I'd imagine, unpopular amongst the electorate that would have to go any higher than the 4.99%. The only bit of positive news, if you can call that, is we have received quite a lot of money for buses, 4 million under the BSIP funding, in addition to the 1.79 million we got last year. The problem we've now got with that is, of course, we will do our absolute utmost to spend it and provide more buses or public transport in Leicestershire. But it is very, very difficult to be strategic with money that's only got a one-year time horizon. Aussie is trying to speak to them to see if we can phase it over 2 years, but it's really, really hard to get value for money out of what is quite a lot of money given to us for buses. You go out to the market, there literally aren't the buses out there. There aren't the drivers out there. And also, if you're going to spend money on increased buses, it'd be best to put the buses on where there's a chance that members of the public may well use them. So it's not in the best interests of spending money, but we have been given it, and Ozzy and his team, and in Ozzy's bus team down there, we're actually short of people to do it, but he promises me we'll do our absolute utmost to spend it, because we don't want to send it back to government. But strategically, it's not the best way to be spending money in a year. In the MTFS, we talk about money from Network North. So as you know, HS2 was cancelled, and the government have put money into so-called Network North. I mean, hopefully it will help us. We wait to see what comes out of it. We probably won't get anything till 2025, but it is good news that the money hasn't been taken away from transport completely. Ozzy may well say a little bit more on this topic, but again, it's hard to plan for, because you don't quite know what you're going to get. They're saying 2025. Well, that's obviously after our next election, let alone a government's next election. So on the face of it, it looks good news, but again, it's difficult to be strategic when we don't actually see the colour of the money, if you know what I mean, just talk about it. On the King's Award for Voluntary Service, we did pretty well, actually. So we've got the Eye, which is in Melton. Health-wise, I'm not sure where they are. Bertie's got two groups from Market Bosworth, which won an award, and I myself have one in Swannington, which has won an award, which is good. So I think we should send congratulations to the organisations involved. On devolution, there's quite a long statement for you from me. I'm certainly not going to read it all out, because it's pretty laborious, but I wanted to have it written down and placed on the record. So when you are asked, and that doesn't mean just our side, but you guys as well, when we're asked about where we are with devolution, that is where we are, which isn't anywhere really. I mean, at one time, as you know, we were the front of the queue when we were asked to bid for county deals. I got it through my group that we'd go for a mayor. It wasn't universally popular. Then when the white paper came out, it talked about functional economic areas, and of course they say the county council area isn't a functional economic area. So we had to go to the city mayor, see if he'd take another mayor above him. He said no. People keep saying to me, well, he ought to really, but it's difficult for me to persuade him really when he is an elected mayor, and every time he bids for money, he gets it and we don't. So, you know, he got 20 million for his bus station. I couldn't even get 7 million for Zoch Bridge. But we are where we are with it, and we will continue battling with whichever government we have on devolution. They keep announcing more deals, deals 2.5, deals 3.5, deals 4. We don't qualify for anything at present except a devolution deal level 2, which is us, the city, and Rutland. The Chief has now got meetings with civil servants, not politicians, but the Chief and Declan, etc., are meeting senior civil servants. I think it's next week, to keep talking about devolution. And whenever I get anything meaningful, I will come back here to inform you, because I'm as disappointed as most of us are that we cannot get anything better than what is described as a pretty vanilla, thin gruel level 2. But again, I'm advised by all the members of Parliament for Leicestershire that we should accept the thin gruel, because they tell me it's better than no gruel at all. And once we take a level 2, if they ever increase the responsibilities for a combined authority, whatever we are, at least we are there and we can accept more responsibilities. So it is disappointing, but we are where we are. Finally, on the Hinckley National Rail Freight Interchange update, I don't think, although they've submitted quite a lot of stuff, I don't think they've come anywhere near getting to alter our recommendation that we're opposed to it. I can't see much upside for it. Certainly not if you live anywhere near the blessed thing. So this is more of a report of where we are. I'm sure some of you people that represent areas around there will have views, but they've made an effort, but they've nowhere near got to altering or taking into account the concerns of this county council about the severe impact the Hinckley National Rail Freight interchange would have on the area. And then finally, just before I came in, Amanda mentioned to me, although it's not on this agenda, that Braunston Town Council have won the Town Council of the Year, and we should offer them our congratulations. Braunston, I think, is the biggest town council in Leicestershire, and obviously must be pretty well run to win Town Council of the Year, so we must send them our congratulations. And I think Amanda may well serve on it or know it better than me and have something to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr Rushton. I was only there at their centre building hub the other night. Yeah, super, at Braunston. Mr O'Shea.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to pick up on the King's Awards. Personally, I know Dougie Skian, who leads Heartwise. He does a fantastic job for training pupils at schools and making sure that they know how to resuscitate and do CPR massage. And it's gone right across the schools in Leicester. And I'd like to thank him for all the work that he does personally. And going on to the leader statement again, in relation to the autumn statement, the BSIP and the Network North funding, I'd like to just say a few words on that, please. We very much welcome the additional 4.05 million Network North funding for buses, which is on top of the already announced 1.79 BSIP funding for buses for both this year and next year. This funding provides a real opportunity for us to try and make a positive difference to Leicestershire passenger transport network. Officers are currently working up a proposed plan that, through close liaison with our bus operators and our enhanced partnership, could shape the network so that it is secure, stable and thriving commercial, so that it is a secure and stable and thriving commercial offering, along with sustainable, cost-effective and value-for-money subsidised bus and demand response transport that enhances access opportunities for our residents across Leicestershire. Other options such as fares and ticketing initiatives, marketing, pinch point schemes, designs, building, buses, business cases for further EV investment, resource systems are also being considered as part of this plan. However, there are potential risks and challenges in realising this plan, mainly resulting from the conditions set out by the DFT. For this funding, and most notably the short timescales for the spend and potential financial cliff edge that this could present to this authority. Officers are working through these proposed, and approach will be made to the DFT to extend the deadline, because to spend that amount of money, as the leader said, in 1 year is very, very difficult. And as lead member, I would like to see it spread across more years so that we can improve the bus services that we have across Leicestershire in a value for money basis for our residents. If I now go on to Network North road resurfacing funding. The maintenance of our highway network remains a key priority for the County Council and for our residents. The additional 2.5 million allocation in the current financial year and the same amount for 24-25 from the road resurfacing fund needs to be used for resurfacing of carriageways, cycleways, which I'm sure people in this room will be pleased about, and footways to prevent potholes and other road defects from occurring, as well as tackling the asset management priorities such as keeping local bridges and other highway structures open and safe. To ensure that this funding is additional to our existing maintenance programmes and that there is transparency and a degree of public scrutiny over how we spend this money, DFT requires us publish plans for additional work that is delivered and report regularly to the department on the delivery process. For the current financial year, as we now only have 4 months to spend 2.25 million, We have worked with regional contractors to secure additional resources. We propose to allocate 0.7 million to address existing pressure in the current year's programme, where the demand for works exceeds our programmed work. We will be putting £1 million into patching to address Cat 2 defects, less urgent potholes, but if not addressed, they will become more urgent and go to Cat 1. With the remaining 0.5 million, we are going to priority pothole repairs. We are currently working on a programme for 24-25, taking into account the additional Network North money, and will seek to programme a balance of reactive works, potholes, and within more effective preventative treatments which help maintain and improve the road condition over a longer period of time. While an additional 2.25 million per year is welcome for this and next year, it will not address the significant backlog of the work that Leicestershire roads or the real impact or deterioration that we continue to face and see. To give you an idea of the level of impact this additional funding will bring to Leicestershire, the current baseline for funding we have for maintenance, DFT grant allocation, is £17.7 million. So of much greater benefit is the 131 million uplift in maintenance funding for 2025-26, allocated over 9 years. If confirmed, this level of funding would enable us to make real progress towards preventing ongoing deterioration and moving our roads and network to a more reasonable standard. Whilst this additional money is positive news for investment in our road network, it does not help with our wider significant budget pressures, as maintaining our existing maintenance budgets is a condition of the additional grant funding. I hope that gives you a bit of an insight as to what the DFT are asking us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr O'Shea. Mr Richardson.
It went yellow. Could I thank the leader for mentioning the Hinckley National Rail Freight Interchange? Along with several other members, I spent a happy 4 days at the public examination, which was real riveting stuff. But my reason for standing up really is to actually say a great big thank you to the officers, particularly in Highways Department here, not just for the work they've done on our behalf at county level, but for the collegiate and partnership way they've worked across the other councils, notably Blaby District Council, Hinckley and Bosworth, Borough Council, Warwickshire County Council and the Highways Agency. I think the partnership of those officers working together has actually really presented a robust case, I believe, to the examiners in looking at this proposal, which, let's be quite frank, would be disastrous for most of southern Leicestershire were it to happen. And again, there were eloquent speeches, I know, from both the MPs, from Councillor Stuart Bray, and from many others, and particularly our residents on behalf of this. It's not often, but it's a season of goodwill, and we have a unanimity of purpose in this chamber. We've passed 2 motions against it. We recognise the impact this will have on our residents, and I think our residents are extremely grateful for everything we're trying to do to prevent this project, which is not a rail freight interchange, it's a warehouse developed by another name. We'll add a minimum of 19,000 lorry movements a day onto our highways, which gives you an illustration why our Highways Department aren't very keen on it, as well as, in fact, Max will probably recognise this one, causing even more congestion, if that is possible. So I'd just like to finish by saying a thank you to everybody involved. I think it's a unique occurrence when we all come together as we have in this chamber and with all our officers working together, and I believe that between us all we can actually stop this project happening. So a great big thank you on behalf of many of us.
Thank you, Mr Richardson. Mr Bill, maybe on the...
Yes, yes. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, could I just respond to Nick's statement about Jeff Welsh? I think that's something that we're all grateful for. In fact, I thought the leader's statement in person is stronger and better than the written statement, which I think possibly smoothed over a few issues. The first sentence says that you could sum up the autumn statement in one word: growth. I'm not just sure the one word would be the same that all these councils who are now in a Section 114 situation would agree with. We all listened with intent to, in the hope that there would be a mention of local government finance, but somehow it got missed out of the statement altogether. Now, further down the statement, there's a reference here to the scrapping of HS2 second leg, and that there's going to be improvements to road and rail within Leicestershire. Could I please ask what exactly these improvements are going to be? I know we've talked in general terms about them, but if there's going to be improvements, there must be some specific items in mind. I know the Prime Minister mentioned the A5 and said it's going to be improved in 2 places, but unfortunately the A5 runs from Marble Arch to Holyhead, so it would be useful if we could see just some scope of what's actually entailed here. And lastly, on the Hinckley rail freight depot, which I still think will be a Hinckley no rail freight depot, because it was said during the hearing that there's no assurance that there'll be any rail connection at all. I sat through the week-long hearing, as in fact I've been monitoring the thing over the last 4 or 5 years. And what struck me was the fact that it didn't matter however many questions were put to the applicants by the inspector and by other speakers, the great majority of the questions were not answered. Despite the fact that they turned up with about 20 advisors on each day, they were totally incapable of answering the most simple question, including the one which I put in, and that was, what on earth happens then when the motorway closes, the M69 closes, the M1 closes, the A5 closes, as happens on a daily, almost daily basis? What is the alternative arrangements for the 50,000 HGVs which we are promised will be going in and out of that place every day? Where exactly will these vehicles go? And there was no answer. Surely, after 5 years of deliberation, they must have some thought about what happens. They must be aware that the M1 is stopped perhaps once a fortnight. The M69 is certainly stopped once a fortnight, and yet no answer was forthcoming. And it concerns me that if this freight depot is being put together because it's government policy to install these depots across the country, then it's very worrying that it's going to go ahead without any further public consultation on the key issues that were raised in the actual hearing that we were subjected to 2 weeks ago. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. Mr. Bray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And again, I want to add my thanks to the leader for his comments on Jeff Welsh. Jeff will be certainly missed from within our group. He was a true gentleman in the sense of the word. I'm sure, therefore, the leader will share my disappointment to have read the leaflets going out in the subsequent by-election criticising Jeff for wasting public money, for resigning so soon after the elections. I think Jeff's illness took a very sudden turn for the worse, and I think it was very brave and decent of him to actually say, I'm no longer fit enough to represent people, and I need to, look after my own health. And so I find it very sad that that's the tone that the election seems to be being fought on. The leader mentions the MTFS. It is obviously clearly very worrying. David mentioned the Nottingham Section 114. They're the first, but I'm sure, well, not the first, Northamptonshire was the first, but they won't be the last, I'm sure, council in this region and nationally who find themselves in that position, particularly those councils who find themselves in a similar situation to them with a low council tax base and spiralling social services costs. I don't know whether the leader's heard anything more than I've heard about what we're likely to get in settlements going forward, but unless this government in its dying days and any future government really grasp this issue about local government finance, particularly around social services costs, then it is going to be a very bleak day for lots of local government across this country. And finally, I just wanted to really echo virtually all the comments that Terry Richardson made about our officers here, working across the board with the district councils involved as well. I absolutely share his view that this is a development that is not needed, and it's an appalling application where the details, as David has said, lots and lots of details missing. And if it is approved, if the government do give it the go-ahead, it will frankly be a traffic and environmental nightmare in our part of Leicestershire. So I very much endorse the comments that have been made by others on that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Mr Bray. Mr Brecon.
Thank you, Chair. Nottingham's Section 114 notice is the 7th council in only 5 years that have been unable to balance the budget. Nottingham's mishaps with the Robin Hood energy scheme, the Broadmarsh shopping centre and their housing revenue accounts undoubtedly have hastened their decline, but it was the same pressures that gave it the final push into bankruptcy. We are approaching the point when a well-run authority will be forced into a Section 114. There are still choices that can be made, albeit difficult ones, that ensure that this county council is not one of them. As the leader said this morning to the BBC, this authority will never be in such a dire position that it has to go bankrupt, and we are budgeting accordingly. And I think that's very true. Members will be aware of the EMSS partnership, the East Midlands Shared Services Partnership that we share with Nottingham. The payroll, supplier payment and income services provided are essential to the operation of both authorities, and we do not envisage any disruption in that service. While Nottingham will need to restrict their future expenditure, it must fulfil existing commitments. So the staff who work in EMSS are employed by ourselves and will be supported through this period of uncertainty. Local government nationally isn't in a good position, so we all need to understand the position for this council. I know the MTFS report, which will be released next week ahead of the Cabinet on the 19th of December, it brings all the latest financial information together, and I encourage all members to take the time to read the report and also to attend the briefing on the 13th of December next week at 11 AM to understand what we are presenting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Brecon. Mr King.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank the leader for his statement, and as much in there that I know we'll all be concerned about. But one of the things that residents in my division are raising with me is, since the publication of the consultation on the reorganisation of the household waste sites, quite a lot of residents have been publicly saying, is this a done deal by the county council? And I've reiterated to them that this is a genuine consultation, but I'd just like to ask the leader if he will also reiterate that this is a genuine consultation on the household waste site reorganisation, and that no done deal is done, and there's still quite a few weeks, till 24th of January, I believe, for residents across Leicestershire to make their comments. So that's what I wanted to ask him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr King.
Thank you, Chair. And just before I start, if I just want to put on the record the Labour Group's thanks to Jeff Welsh. Jeff, a real popular councillor, but also personally gave a huge amount of support to me when I first became a councillor, and his kindness and his thoroughness in terms of the role that he took here can't go under notice. So I want to put our thanks on record. Thank you. I thought it was interesting that Mr. Bill raised that the one word in growth. That wouldn't have been the word I would have used from the autumn statement. So maybe we're being polite in polite company. I don't know, but I think what's interesting in the leader's position is we'd hoped for an improvement settlement, but the fact we didn't get one wasn't a surprise or wasn't a shock. I think this is the frustration that we all continue to have. We keep talking with ministers, we keep having those conversations, we keep raising the issues of local government finances being a dire position, and they are just not listening. And I think that it's really frustrating that this continues to happen, and we just get no further along that road. Although ironically we've got cash in for roads, and the cancelling of a long-term infrastructure project of HS2 has brought in some short-term improvements, and I think that is really frustrating. You know, swapping long-term decisions for some short-term ones, I think is really problematic. Whilst clearly we value an increase in bus capacity in Leicestershire. It's something that we've all been calling for. And actually the Highways Scrutiny Committee that we talked about buses, probably the most exciting scrutiny I've been to. We actually were able to talk about something positive for a change, which was great. I think there's so many great ideas and so much creativeness within our officers at county. I'm sure that they will come up with some great solutions for that short-term cash. But if Aussie can continue to appeal to get that long-term, I think that would be really, really important. In terms of the King's Award for Voluntary Service, yeah, massive congratulations for those organisations. Personally, the work that I agree with Aussie, the work that Heartwise do around defibrillators is really important. And actually, we had a report to Health Scrutiny about 2 years ago on our coverage of defibs across Leicestershire, which was really helpful because it gives us a sense of where the gaps are, how we can improve capacity across the county. And also, you know, thank you to Nick to mentioning Braunstown Town Council. The Town Council I was a Town Council for 12 years, receiving an award last week in the Lords for being the best town council in England, and that, you know, voted for by the public. But I think one of the things that's really interesting about being involved in a town council or parish council is just how close you can get to communities. You're really close to what they need. Really, it's a really positive part of our communities, and most town and parish councils are also volunteers. So I think it's important to pay tribute to all volunteers. But those 5 organisations that have been awarded the King's Award, excellent, really, really great news for them. In terms of devolution, obviously it's really useful to have the information again about what the different tiers actually mean. It would be great if we can just get on with it. I think there is a real sense that, you know, we've been hanging around chatting about whether it's tier 3, tier 2, arguing about who's doing what and when. Actually, it'd be really useful just to get a time frame and get it delivered, because actually that's when we see some form of benefit. So it's useful to hear the timetable on that. And thanks for the update on the Hinckley National Rate Freight Interchange. I don't need to add from what other members have said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hack. Mr. Mullaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I also add my thanks to Nick for his kind comments about Jeff Welsh, and also to Amanda for her comments, and everyone else who said kind things about Jeff. Jeff was very committed to the area he represented on the county council and did a lot of good work on the commission on which he sat on, and he was a great representative of the community, and it's a shame that he's had to stand down due to his ill health. In terms of the MTFS, obviously we are still incredibly worried by the huge financial gap that the county council is facing and the continued failure to deliver the fair funding that our area needs in order to ensure that we can deliver the quality services we need. We have over the years had many leaders' statements in which we've been told about meetings with who's who of government ministers, whether it was Rishi Sunak or Lee Rowley or Jeremy Hunt or a whole range of ministers who've listened and apparently been sympathetic towards the position of the county council, but we still await the actual funding that will help deal with the increasingly serious situation that the county is financially facing. In terms of HS2, if the money is reinvested in the North and the Midlands and in our area, then obviously we welcome that. If we can use some of the bus service money to get back services like the 159, the 1 and 2 that many residents still tell me they want to see back, it would be good if the County Council could look into that situation again with those bus services, which people in Hinckley and many of the villages appreciated and found very useful. The King's Award for Voluntary Services, certainly congratulations to all the winners, in particular obviously Bosworth in Bloom and the Market Bosworth Community Library and all the other groups that have been awarded. In terms of devolution, again, if we get some funding, that's positive. But if you look at the misnamed East Midlands devolution deal, which only contains 2 of the 6 counties in the East Midlands, but which they're now boasting they're going to get economic funding the equivalent of 1.14 billion, it does show Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, Derby, Leicester and Nottingham, it does show what we are missing out on potentially by being given a less favourable deal. So it is disappointing that given that our county misses out in terms of funding, in terms of county funding, it's also disappointing that on the devolution front as well, we are getting less, considerably less than what other counties not very far away are likely to be getting. In terms of the Hinckley National Rail Freight Interchange, it's good to see that everybody is united against this disastrous plan. It really is not needed. It's not a rail freight interchange in anything but name. It's just going to put huge amounts of lorries on overstretched local roads and blight Burbage Common. And so I'm glad that there is general unanimity against the proposals. Myself and my Hinckley colleagues, Councillor Bill and Bray, spoke against the plans at the public hearing, as did a number of other members of the authority and elected officials. Hopefully, the government will listen, and when the Secretary of State for Transport makes the final decision, they will realise that it's a very flawed proposal, that Tritax's proposals have many errors and mistakes in it, and that we can see that proposal turned down, because it would really not be a good thing for the area around Hinckley and other neighbouring towns and villages. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mullaney. Mr Rushton, you have the right to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, to Michael as leader of the Liberal Democrats, I'm glad you've identified the huge financial gap, Michael, because we're all going to have to deal with it in the next couple of 3 months, and it will be difficult, but it is beholden on us to do our best to get to a balanced budget. This year we've had to put 10 million of reserves in. Next year we'll probably have to put 10 million reserves in. And we will have to work together to identify where we can make the savings. Because despite you saying fair funding, and you're right, I've met ministers annually, biannually. I've met Liberal ministers, and they've all promised us fair funding, and nothing has come to fruition. And I think we're just going to have to recognise, Michael, that there is no chance of fair funding before a general election, and it will necessitate very, very difficult decisions. You talk about the so-called East Midlands Authority, D2 and N1 now, so obviously one of the ends has gone bankrupt, so I'm glad we're not associated with them, because had we have been, they would have taken our money. You know, we would have ended up subsidising that basket case of an authority. So I'm kind of glad we're not with D2 N1 now, and although the government promised them loads of money, let's wait and see what they do actually get. I don't believe some of those numbers they get. And when they quote those big numbers, at the end of the sentence they say, oh, and that's over 10 years. So they say 1.5 billion, they go, over 10 years, quietly like that. So it's not all roses joining D2 and N1. So I think we've had a bit of a lucky escape from that at the present. Amanda, thank you for your generally supportive comments. It's appreciated. And on to David Bill. HS2 money. Well, there is going to be money, David, from the cancellation of HS2. So, for instance, there will be some money for the A5. I don't know whether it's in Marble Arch or wherever you say it goes to, but I would imagine there'd be some Holyhead. Well, let's hope it's not spent in Marble Arch or Holyhead, because the bit of, obviously, that we're most concerned about is the bit that runs between us and Warwickshire, you know, to the, is it the south, east, west or north Hinkley? That's the bit we want them to spend money on, because that is the most congested and the most dangerous road that I ever use. There will be money for the Ivanhoe line. Okay, we're not happy that it only goes to Derby. We want it to go to Leicester, but let's take what they've offered us to start with and then lobby them again on going to Leicester. They say it costs another 250 million to go to Leicester, but I never used Derby Station. I know apparently for you rail buffs, it's a really well-connected station with lots of track and capacity there, but I prefer to go to Leicester. So when we get it, let's press them on getting to Leicester. There is extra money for the A511 in Colville. So they're now going to give us the full funding for the A511 in Colville, which will help my area, because obviously we've taken thousands of houses. So hopefully that will help solve some of the congestion. There will be money for roads maintenance. And of course, we're hoping to get some money for Zotch Bridge. So, you know, I complained to the minister the other day. He gave the blessed city mayor 20 million to fiddle around with his bus station. He's already had 20 million a few years ago, and we can't get 7 million to fix Zotch Bridge, which is a real bad thing. If you drive a truck, it's about a 50-mile round trip now, so you avoid Zotch Bridge, and that's only 7 million. You know, so I say to ministers, they say, they're going to stop the city mayor having money if he doesn't take a directly elected mayor. I said, well, you want to put your money where your mouth is, because at the moment he might not want to join us in a level 3 deal, but you still keep shoveling money at him. Every time he bids for something, he gets it, and every time we bid, we don't get it. So they really ought to address that. Stuart, on by-elections, I'm not in control of what people say in elections, and if I'm honest, Stuart, you're just as guilty as we are. You put bad stuff out, we put bad stuff out. It's the cut and thrust of local politics. So we can all here say how nice Jeff was, and he was a good guy, but he's gone now, and the election is a whole different scenario, and things will be said which maybe neither you nor I as friends would agree with, but, you know, that is just where it is. On the local government settlement, Stuart, I very much doubt that we're going to get any extra money. I mean, if we did, it would be a bonus. So what we have to do to make sure we don't end up like Birmingham, Nottingham, is plan for the worst, and then if we get more, we can then row back on things which we're going to have to do. For instance, Phil talks about the waste sites in Harborough. He's mentioning, because he is Harborough, but I've got Christine in Shepshed, I've got people up in Melton Mowbray, and I can promise them this is a genuine consultation, and it is not something that any of us would have wanted to do if we had sufficient money in the system not to do it. 3,000 responses so far, Phil, the most we've ever had. Now, they're not all from Harborough, although a lot of them from Harborough due to your activism, but you must promise them, Phil, and Christine and Shepshed, that it is not a done deal. It is not a done deal. And if we could find the $500,000, which is the saving, I think the big hill of beans amounts to, if we can find that money, I would not want to close them. It's as simple as that. It's only about money. We're not being spiteful to Harborough and Shepshed and Somerby, I think it is. It literally is about money. So please do reassure them, Phil, it's not a done deal. And if we can find the money, we will try our best. But at the moment, the consultation hasn't closed, and we must wait till it's closed and then make informed decision based on evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rushton. So we move on to considering reports of the Cabinet, Scrutiny Commissions, Scrutiny Committees and other bodies, starting off with reports of the Cabinet, the first one being the Annual Delivery Report and Performance Compendium. Mr. Rushton to move and Mr. Brecken to second.
I won't dwell on this a long time. So the Annual Performance Report and Performance Compendium sets out what we've achieved this year and highlights where we continue to be the most efficient county council, despite, as I've said, us being, well, as we all know, being the lowest funded county council. We're operating in an extremely challenging financial environment, and personally I think we've done pretty well with the money we've got. You know, if we had loads more money, we could do a load more stuff. So what we're doing is doing our best with what we've got. It is, if I'm honest, becoming harder and harder to maintain our high-ranking position in the great scheme of things, but we're doing well, in all honesty, with the money we've got. Two of our unsung heroes here who do a lot of work on this, and he didn't turn up to Cabinet this year for the first year because he was either on holiday or sick, is Andy Brown, who works tirelessly in there, along with another guy called Richard Wilding. They form our excellent business team. They pull together all this stuff, and although it looks pretty mundane and boring, it is absolutely essential that we do have it, because this shows us where we could be doing better and where we and also where we've done well. So I won't go on any more about it. It is a huge piece of work. It goes to Cabinet and it comes here, and I'd welcome any comments. So I'll move the motion, Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Rushton. Mr. Brecon?
Yeah, happy to second the motion, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Adult social care, and as Nick keeps reminding me, we've got to try and save some money. By 2026, we have 3 aims. 1, more people find it easy to access information and advice about adult care services. 2, improvements in the experience of those who receive adult social care and support. And carers feel more recognised, valued and supported to undertake their caring role. And we quite often have meetings and that with the carers. In this report, you will find 12 achievements in adult social care and 5 for carers, including 3,293 pieces of care technology, 97% of which say they feel safer, 4,639 adaptations to people's homes. 87.4% of people who received settlement of no ongoing services have now ongoing services. 89% of the people were living out at the home 91 days after discharge from reassessment. These last two figures take us in a total of 25% of councils. You can read these performance figures on pages 38 to 39 of the report. Despite increasingly demand and highly stretched budget, the Adults and Communities Department continues to excel and facing the need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Radford. Mr. Hunt.
Sorry, Chair, I thought you were taking Cabinet members first to defend their pitches. So I'd like to thank officers for the many achievements in the report. At a time when public service can often be undervalued by the public. It's also important to recognise the difficult job that Cabinet members have. And with the slim resources, going back to austerity over 13 years, it has over that time been incredibly difficult with cuts in our services year by year. But I want to focus briefly on the progress we've made to the net zero strategy, and thank Blake for his hard work and support that he gives to officers in a difficult endeavour. I said when the Council agreed the policy that it's hard to focus on a strategy which had so many actions, I think 136 different actions, especially when many of those actions were without smart, measurable outcomes. Perhaps we can address that when we receive the annual report and update of the strategy next year. We need to measure things that can be measured, and these include carbon and greenhouse gases emitted from endeavours like our treatment of waste, incineration, and so on. We don't know the extra carbon and other emissions from all the road projects in pipeline, and sometimes not even the cost or even the level of congestion which might be caused or mitigated. So we need to look at this in much more detail. I've already said that we aren't given figures for congestion, but we need to publish extra carbon that the new road capacity engenders. Finally, we need controls, demand-side measures, if you like, to control the pollution from traffic. If you remember, we were all talking about ULEZ about 3 or 4 months ago, and that has proved to be not the great bogey that the public assumed to think at the time. We're told that society isn't ready for these measures, but what we mean is that we're not ready. We're not ready to protect our society in the end if we don't do these things. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hunt. Mr. Mayor.
Cheers, thank you, Chair. Lots of things in this report. It's a very, very detailed report, which is welcoming. And I just want to touch on some of the community stuff. So with my community hat on, I speak to a lot of the community centres in and around Loughborough. And they've always been very positive about the County Council and the support the County Council has given them. And I think that is something to be celebrated. It's tough out there, tough out for organisations, but they haven't found any shortcomings in the County Council, which is really encouraging as well. And also we have citizenship ceremonies, and this doesn't get touched on, but we have people all the time become citizens of the UK, and this is where they come to be there to take their citizenship. And I met a group after they had their citizenship, and they were so glowing about what it meant to them. But this was the first point. This is where they really felt that they were part of this country, and it's so glad that you know, Leicestershire and the citizenship that the service that we provide touches them in that, especially when you turn on the press and it's all negativity about people coming over and the reasons why they're coming over or whatever it may be. But the County Council does it really good, and it touches really well. And my final point on this compendium is, yeah, lots of people put in a lot of effort and a lot of time in this report, and I think we as county councillors owe it to the officers and the people who are providing the services out there to touch upon it probably in our reports and spread the message far and wide, because I don't think we do that. We're going through a by-election recently, and then we're talking about negativity, and we should be talking about positivity, because at this moment in time it's really tough out there. People want to talk about positivity and not negativity at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Parton.
Some rhetorical questions. The first one is, do we wish to see safer communities? Well, from this report, we read that Leicestershire performs in the top quartile for least road casualty figures. In other words, safer than nearly all other councils. Secondly, do we wish to see signs that our strategic vision is working? Do we want to provide the communities we all love and represent with the means to grow stronger? Well, if you look at the communities section, there are 19 points of success. Here are some of them. 29,000 new joiners to libraries. That's a 41% increase post-COVID. All LCC heritage sites rated excellent. Green Flag Awards for Watermead Park, Beacon Hill and Snibston Park. Melton Museum and the Bosworth Centre, both winning awards. And do we wish to recognise the role carers play? Now, the Adults and Communities' third aim that Mrs Radford spoke to shortly was by 2026 to ensure that carers feel more recognised. So on the 5th of June, this very chamber was packed full of carers. And we've enabled grants for 154 unpaid carers, with grants worth £56,000, supporting those discharged from hospital. 6,000 carers have been issued a carer's passport, which offers them discounts to shops, attractions and amenities. And Voluntary Action South Leicestershire have won the contract to support all of our carers with a whole host of assistance means.
you, Mr Barton. Mr Bill.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wonder if I could continue the theme that Max started about climate change. And I'm looking at page 45 of the report, Clean and Green. We had a meeting of the local pension committee on Friday, and the proposition that we put forward, well, a colleague of mine and myself put forward, was that in view of the situation that we all know we face with climate change and the likelihood that fossil fuel investment is not going to be the surefire winner that it has been up to now, that there should be thought should be given to an additional fund using the investment the investment apparatus to put into a new fossil-free investment fund. Now, this was effectively lodged at the local pension committee on Friday and will be fully debated at our next meeting, which I think is in January. But this is a measure which I hope will get support from members here. This is to actually do something positive along the principles of COP28, which we all hope and pray is moving in the right direction. So this is a positive contribution which I hope will be taken in that spirit. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr Bill. Mrs Page.
Thank you, Chairman. The Scrutiny Commission considered this report in November of last year, and we gave it a very good scrutiny evaluation. The points are reflected on page 37 and 90.19 onwards. Now, I also like to thank all of the officers, because on a personal basis, I think this is a really good report, and for me personally, it's a Bible where at any time I can look up what we have done on a certain issue, and I find it very invaluable for my daily communication with my residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Rushton replies.
Great, thank you, Chairman. First of all, to Ted. Oh, sorry. Confused me.
Sorry, I thought my hand had been spotted, obviously not, or missed off the list. Thank you. Just to pick up a few of the highlights from the Children and Families Department. So we received 22 million of support from the Government's Household Support Fund that was made available to help us ease the pressure of the cost of living, and including emergency food and fuel support and free school meal vouchers during the holidays. In addition, we had free holiday clubs, gym passes and coaching sessions offered during the summer of 2023 for those requiring extra support. And this was the Council's biggest ever offer of free holiday clubs. And just to give you a little bit more detail of our Holiday Activity Fund programme, so this was targeting school-aged children in receipt of benefits related to free school meals, and offers free access to holiday club places, including a healthy meal and an opportunity to participate in a range of activities. So we had 4,330 children and young people access our HAF provision in 22-23, and that included 383 secondary age young people. At the point of writing this report, we'd opened 9 out of our 25 family hubs, but we're now up to 17 across the county so far. I've got another one to open tomorrow in Lutterworth. And this is a one-stop shop for parents and carers to support the best start for life and developing a maternity and early years strategy. And we also offer our Reducing Parental Conflict programme within all our family hubs as well. We also expanded our support for families experiencing domestic abuse, the Children and Family Wellbeing Service, which also provides targeted early help to families. And we also provide intensive key worker support to families with more complex needs. We have regular updates with Ofsted, which is called a recent focus visit. So this praised the Council's Children's Services for its support for children in care. So we're really pleased to have that conversation with Ofsted, and we're expecting a full Ofsted visit next year at some point in the early part of the year. So we're hoping for a really good Ofsted visit then. So the Defining Children and Families Service for the Future programme is working to deliver outcomes alongside the Social Care Investment Programme, In partnership with Bernardo's, the authority has been successful in obtaining additional grant funding to invest in 9 properties, and that will provide us up to 27 placements for our most complex children, which will keep them near to us in Leicestershire, near their families, and near all the support that they need. Several of those units are planned to be operational this financial year. We have had over 500 households were open their homes to support nearly 1,000 guests from Ukraine, including 350 children, providing a safe and welcoming environment for them fleeing the Russian invasion. We also provided home-to-school transport for 62 displaced Ukrainian students by initiating policy exceptions. Already mentioned today was libraries from Councillor Parton there. So we had 6,000 children join the Summer Reading Challenge in Leicestershire Libraries in 2022, with over 3,500 reading at least 6 books and completing the challenge. And for us, this is really important. Reading and writing is one of the most important things that we can teach our young people to put them on the right path for the rest of the year. And we've had over 50 looked after children who worked with our library and heritage services to choose a book that had an inspirational impact on them and were supported by professional artists to create a piece of art which expressed that. This co-created project culminated in a hugely successful My Books, My Story exhibition at the High Cross Shopping Centre. It won the National Reading for Pleasure Teacher Award and has been shortlisted for the National Engaging People's Awards, and I was honoured enough to go and look around the exhibition. It was absolutely amazing. I met some of the children there and their families that were enjoying showing all the shoppers their pieces of art that they wear. So it's a fantastic exhibition for us. And I just want to add that all this support gives our children the best start for life and supports them to be amazing adults in the future. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the staff in my department for the amazing job they do in such a difficult climate. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Taylor. Mr Mullaney.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. As Mrs Page stated, the Scrutiny Commission looked closely at this report and had a very detailed discussion on it. And I congratulate the officers who put the report together. It's a very comprehensive, high-quality report. And it does show much of the good work that is done by the County Council, which is why it is such a tragedy that our county has not got the fair funding it had, which means we could do so much more. And also the risk to much that's currently being done by the authority because of the perilous financial situation that our county is in. As the performance compendium to the report shows on page 85 to 87, if Leicestershire had the core spending power of the median funding for a county council, we'd have about £120 million extra in funding. And you can imagine how much more the authority could do and how much more of the services it could protect if it had that kind of additional funding. Sadly, because we're not getting that fair deal and we're being rather taken for granted, we're in the financial difficult situation we are in. But again, I congratulate the officers who've put together a very detailed and worthwhile report. Thank you.
Just having a quick look round, make sure no one else I've missed. Mrs Hack.
Yeah, sorry to go before, to go after Michael. I think like other councillors have said, the performance compendium is such a useful summary of the year. It's a sort of, you know, how the work that we do translates into a really thorough report. But actually, I really like to delve into the numbers at the back. It's the table at the back that I found super interesting. I think the other thing that I couldn't help but notice in reading the reports is just how important and how valuable we've put into the reports about our Shire grants, which obviously the decision has been made not to continue with those because of the financial pressures. And I think that's a real shame because that does come through the report, just how important and how valuable communities see the Shire grant. I think in terms of the performance, you can't help notice on paragraph 12, we talk about the county being highlighted as the most efficient and productive county, yet in the following paragraph, it indicates that almost 40% of the metrics have got worse. And that clearly is down to the budget. There is, you know, there's no doubt in my mind that it's starting to have a real knock-on impact in the way in which we can improve our services to local people, but actually how local people feel too. And that's going to be the real challenge as the financial pressures continue to bite, is just how will we look at areas that we can improve services for our residents, particularly those metrics that we're in control of. And I know that this is a summary of metrics that we don't all control too. I think also the summary document hides a little bit, maybe that's in the main document, about some of the huge difficulties the authority is having on special educational needs, and we've talked about that at length already. But also, what was something that I picked up is that attendance rates of secondary school children, that our secondary school schools are starting to fall back in terms of their Ofsted. There are other things that we are really starting to notice, and I think there's a real connection with the budget all over on that. And you can't help but ignore the crime levels are starting to creep, and I think that the data does bear out those metrics. I think one of the things that we always have to balance is the colleagues that we've got, the colleagues that we employ, do an amazing job with the resources we give them, and credit to those colleagues for the work that they continue to toil day after day, but also for the individuals that put this report together. It's an excellent piece of work, and it's something that I really value as a councillor, so thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Zack. Right, Mr. Rushton, you now have the right to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, can I thank Scrutiny for the work they did? That's Rosita and, of course, you, Michael. Thank you very much. I think, generally speaking, this is a good document showing good performance, although we do have to recognise what Amanda says. It will be a challenge going forward to maintain the same performance with less resources. So, it's a given that you're right on that. Thanks to Deborah and Ted for pointing out some of the things we do, because they are worth highlighting, some of the good things we actually do with the limited money we've got. Can I just take Max to task on, well, one thing to start, one thing. You mentioned austerity. Now, if this is austerity 2, it will be incredibly difficult for us, because when we went into austerity 1, although we all moaned, we were relatively fat, and there was plenty of low-hanging fruit to get to. If this is austerity 2, it will be even more difficult to maintain where we're going, because all the easy wins have gone. And if I'm honest, I don't see much hope from Labour riding to the rescue to shovel money at local government. I mean, you've got a leader now comparing himself to Margaret Thatcher. So, you can't say that even your own team's going to ride to save us. And then you say, ULEZ has been a great success. It's been a dreadful success. Absolutely bloody dreadful. It's just another tax that Sadiq Khan dreamt up to subsidise London. It's not anything green. It's greenwashing. It is just a tax penalising the normal middle-of-the-road or lower-caste motorist who has to use a van to go to work, who has to use a car to get into London. And you try going down to Heathrow now. It's 20 quid just to get into Heathrow. It's honestly, Max, it's just a tax. It's nothing to do with green. And it is incredibly unpopular in the area where it's levied. And it's unpopular with me, who doesn't go to London that often, but when I do have to pay his blessed tax. David Belt, the pension fund. Now, it doesn't behove a leader to interfere with the pension fund, but I do know that they have a policy that they will try and put 20% of the pension fund into so-called green or tech industries. But I would suggest to you, David, the main job of the pension fund committee is to ensure it has sufficient resources and return to pay the pensions of people who are beneficiaries of it. It's all very nice you standing up here saying you want to stop doing this, stop doing that. But people rely on this fund for their pensions. And with some of your policies, their return will be less. So I wouldn't comment on it. We've got a damn good pension fund with some good members, and apparently they were here for 4 hours the other day going through it. So I trust them in what they're doing, and I trust them that they will ensure there's sufficient money in the fund to pay the pensions of people that used to work for us. Thank you.
So we now need to vote on the motion. The motion before you is that the annual delivery report and performance compendium 2023 be approved. Please show all in favour. Thank you very much. That was unanimous. Thank you very much. Approval, that was, in favour. Move on to the second report. Annual report of the Director of Public Health. Mrs Richardson to move, Mrs Radford to second. Mrs Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, as defibrillators were mentioned a bit earlier, could I put out a plea to anyone who actually puts a defibrillator in situ anywhere, that they do make sure they register it with the ambulance services. I'm hearing reports where defibrillators are not registered, and of course in an emergency trying to find a code will delay that life-giving support. Thank you. Going on to the report, it's an independent report from the Director of Public Health, and I think it's really good to see that the population in the county is in reasonably good health. There are many positives within the report, but we do need to see an improvement on diet and physical activity. And we'll be making sure that the grant and the work of the department focuses on these big issues as best as we can. There's also further work to do on air quality with partners, and we'll be making sure all organisations who have a role in improving health do so. It's very much the experience of the individual and groups beneath this broad brush approach of the document that makes the difference. I'd like to thank Mike Sands and the whole team for all the work they're doing in public health. So I will move that the annual report of the Director of Public Health 2023 be noted with support. Thank you.
Mrs Radford to second.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second this annual report. The report sets out the health and the population across Leicestershire. Some of the information in the report will have an impact on the adult department, which I'm lead member of, and we shall certainly take note of it. And I'd like again to thank the staff for all the work they've done on the report. Thank you.
Mrs Newton.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the officers for such a good report. I just wanted to say something very quickly on page 151. It's really about the impact of COVID on school pupils, because there's been an increase of school pupils with emotional, social and mental health needs. And I just wondered whether or not that will actually have an impact on the work, on their school work, on their ability to perform well in a school environment. If that is the case, I was just wondering what sort of support packages we can put in place to help these vulnerable young people. Thank you.
Much. Mrs Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, again, as a data geek like myself, having the opportunity to delve into the health of Leicestershire is always of real interest, and it's great to see the report back. So if you could pass on my thanks to the team for all of the effort and energy that goes behind this report. It's really pleasing to see that the overall health of for Leicestershire's population is good. I think we do have to identify some of the outliers, and Louise has already identified health and physical diet and physical activity, so that's really positive. I think one of the things that, for me, a bit of an outline, something that actually has started to become more of a problem, is vaccination. While in little children is actually pretty good, it's when we get to teenage vaccinations that's where we're seeing a drop-off, and that has started to creep since straight after COVID, but that has started to become more of an issue. So I don't know if that's because of anti-vaccinations, or whether or not there is a real link between youngsters not being well enough to attend school, because we've seen attendance drop that was in the previous report. So I don't know if that's connected, but I don't know whether or not Health Scrutiny are going to have a look at vaccinations in their coming programme. That would be really useful. I think the other thing that that also I picked up on, and I'm sure other councillors did as well, is that the rate of C-sections has increased. And clearly there are many reasons why a C-section will be better for mum and baby. I think that is really important to have that. There are more complications with C-sections, so I didn't know if there was anything specific that sat behind that. Thank you so much for the report.
Thanks, Mr. Sack. Mr. Parton.
We surely all know somebody in our family circle or friendship that we hold dear that unfortunately suffers from 2 or more of the 6 comorbidities that are listed on page 9. So it's therefore reassuring to see that the government have launched this major condition strategy, because these 6 produce 60% of the illness and death in the UK. Now, coming to Leicestershire County Council, on the 24th of November, Cabinet approved, as a result of a consultation that 151 people completed, the Loughborough and South of Leicester cycling and walking strategy. And we read here in this report that the percentage of adults walking to work 3 or more days a week is RAG-rated red. And similarly for cycling 3 or more days, it's amber. So this is the very reason Cabinet sought to address this issue. Back to the NHS, in 2021, you will all recall that the LPT, along with the Council and other partners, consulted heavily on reconfiguring mental health services. And we read now that Leicestershire ranks first for lowest number of suicides and hospital admissions for mental health conditions. Indeed, there are no indicators in this report where Leicestershire is worse than average relating to mental health. I'm bringing it really close to home with adults and communities. We read that LCC is in the top 3 for least falls in people over 65 and over, and for deaths in care homes. So when we all either sit either in our scrutiny roles or Cabinet, we can now see that the work is worth progressing, and there is hope amongst the gloom of funding issues.
Thanks, Mr. Parton. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you very much, Chair. My thanks to our Director of Public Health and his team for putting this report together. This is obviously the first report that's been published for since 2019. COVID has been referenced already, but this report still carries many references to the sort of hangover from the last couple of years. But it also includes, obviously, a full coverage of all the health provision across the county area, much of which is not under our control, but obviously this report reports on that. There are some good elements, some successes across the county, and those have been talked about within the scrutiny committee that I chair. But there's also ongoing issues that I know the health professionals across the county area still need to resolve, many of which will continue to be pressed over the coming months and years. But I think it is a welcome return to normality that we have this report with us today. It is testament to Mike Sandy's determination to get business back to normal, but also to the credit of his team, and also to Mrs. Richardson and Mrs. Radford as respective lead members that Mike works with. So on behalf of the committee, I pass my thanks to Mike and his team, and also welcome the sight of a document that we haven't seen since 2019. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Morgan. Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and I'll just echo their words. I always enjoy reading the Director of Public Health report, and I have been seeing it since 2019, so it's good that we're in the chamber discussing this. I just want to pick up the point from Mrs Newton about school attendance for children. I think we are now seeing the impact of COVID on our children, the school readiness that children have missed, that social interaction in their early years, so they're arriving not ready for school, their issues with speech and language, and quite a few children not even be able to use the toilet themselves because they've not had learnt those skills. And we've also got real problems with children transitioning from primary to secondary. That's quite a stressful time for children anyway, but having missed that transition and the visits to secondary schools during COVID, we are now seeing the impact of that. So we do have a lot of school children that are struggling to attend due to sort of lower level anxiety, and they just need that emotional support. But for me, we can only do so much within the budgets that we've got. Schools are also struggling with their finances and the staff that they can put in place. So for me, we do have a real gap within Leicestershire, and I think that needs picking up by health, because this lower level anxiety and trauma and stress that children are suffering from is really a health issue that they need support with and counselling with, and we can only do so much. Schools can only do so much, but so I think there is a real gap. The health, they're fantastic at the severe side, the acute side that we've just heard from Mr Parton there about our suicide rates, which is fantastic. But there's a big gap where children don't hit those thresholds of support. So I do wish, and I will continue lobbying for health to step up a little bit. We need their support to enable our children to get back in school. That's where they need to be. That's where they're safe. That's where they're taught to be good citizens and to grow into good adults. So I will continue lobbying to get that support for our children to get them back into school. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Taylor. After no more indications, no, none. So we'll move that on to motion as well. So that the annual report... Oh, sorry, of course. Mrs Richards right to respond.
Thank you. Yes, in regard to mental health and emotional needs of school children, there is an awful lot of work going on now. There is a lot of concentration on the mental health for adults, and a lot of grant schemes set up between the NHS and the local authority. One of my priorities is mental health, and especially in children, and we are now working across the whole system. So, for example, mental health spans all the subgroups of the Health and Wellbeing Board. We have a development session on Thursday with all the partners. We have a development session with the Health and Wellbeing Partnership, so it's very much on the agenda. And there are mental health nurses as well that are provided for schools where they have children who have real difficulties, and I have called one in myself, so I know that they're working. Also on vaccination, we're very much working on the vaccination problems we have in getting the teenagers really to be able to take up the PCV, etc., and the measles especially. That is ongoing work, but it is happening. Someone mentioned C-sections, Amanda. Some of that will be elective, some are urgent, and mainly NHS, but where we can get involved is the education pre-pregnancy and also during pregnancy to ensure that the options are there. What was the other thing? Mobility. That is a system-wide priority as well. There's lots of work done on that score. The walking and cycling. It's culture change, isn't it, to move from a car to a bike or to use our own feet. And it takes a lot of time to get that moving. But Highways have got community groups talking about cycleways going on, so we're linking in with communities to try and get that change going. So thank you very much for all your comments.
Thanks, Mr. Right. Now we will put it to the vote. That is that the annual report of the Director of Public Health for 2023 be noted with support. Those who in favour, please. Unanimous again. Thank you. All in favour? Get this together. Agenda item number 7, reports to the Employment Committee. In this case, we have a pay policy statement that Mr Brecken is going to move and Mr Bedford will second. Mr Brecken.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I move the motion, I will say that the last committee, the 23-24 pay deal, was agreed and confirmed at the beginning of last month. And at the moment, those back payments are scheduled for December for this month. So happy to move the motion that the County Council's pay policy statement 24-25, as set out in the appendix to the report of the Employment Committee, be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Bedford.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second the motion proposed by Mr Brecken.
Thank you. Exactly as Mr Brecken has just read out, take a vote on the motion. All in favour, please. Yeah. Gosh. Unanimous. Wow. And the final item on the agenda today is revised protocol on member officer relations. And Mr Barclay to move, Mr Richardson to second. Mr Barclay.
Thank you, Chairman. This is some minor amendments to the member officer relations and their protocol, principally ensuring members that are fully informed as early as possible about matters affecting their electoral division, inviting local members to any event being held in their division, the need to invite local members where a public meeting is being organised by the County Council in their division, and noting members of consultations affecting the divisions. The majority of this already happens. The other issue is advising members how to deal with officers of the County Council or in their division and the protocol there. I mean, this has been through corporate governance and it was recommended for approval. Any changes to the member officer relation protocol needs to come through full council after going through corporate governance, and that's it. So I move the revised protocol on member officer relation be approved.
Thank you very much. Mr Richardson to second.
Very sensible amendments, Mr Chairman. Happy to second.
Anybody want to make any comments? We'll move to the motion then. All in favour?